for your seed financing towards that. And thank you once again, Mr. President. So important is the African Development Bank that the Organization of African Unity gave it a clear mandate, and you heard it from Chairperson Moussa Faki, to mobilize development financing for Africa. And we are doing so with your collective support. In 2019, you, the shareholders of the bank, raised the capital of the bank from $93 billion to $208 billion, the highest in the history of the bank since it was established in 1964. Thank you very much. But the strength of the bank has always been its staff. From just 10 pioneer members in 1964, we now have 2,092 staff members today from 76 countries. We all come with one goal in mind: accelerate Africa's development. Our Board of Governors and Board of Directors from 81 member countries have been the guiding lights for the bank. From an initial capital base of $250 million when we started, see where we are today. The African Development Bank has consistently maintained its AAA ratings and is the only AAA-rated financial institution in Africa. We are proud to have created and incubated and nurtured solid African financial institutions, including the Africa Export-Import Bank, the West Africa Development Bank, Shelter Afrique, Africa 50, among others. The African Development Bank is a trusted voice for Africa at the global level. Whether it is at G7, whether it's at G20, the African Development Bank is there with a seat at the table, and we use that voice to advance Africa's interests. The African Development Bank is responsive to Africa's needs. When COVID-19 struck, we responded swiftly and increased net outflows to countries with a crisis response facility of up to $10 billion. Your Excellencies, the African Development Bank is now helping to support Africa to produce its own medicines and vaccines. And that is what led us as an institution to create a new institution called the African Pharmaceutical Technology Foundation. I would like to thank you, Mr. President Kagame, as the chairman of the Eminent Advisory Council of this foundation. And thank you very much for hosting this foundation's headquarters in Kigali. Thank you very much, Mr. President. I am delighted that in less than 1 year since its establishment, the African Technology Foundation, like all the other institutions we set up before, was listed by DIVEX as one of the 24 institutions to watch out for globally in 2024. Just last week, I was at the G7 Finance Ministers and Central Bank Governors meeting in Stresa, Italy, where the G7 strongly supported the Alliance for Green Infrastructure in Africa, jointly developed by the African Development Bank, Africa 50, and the Africa Union. It was quite exciting that the G7 collectively pledged $150 million to AGIA. The G7 also pledged support for the callable capital increase of the African Development Bank. The G7 also signaled strong support for the successful 17th replenishment of the African Development Fund. Never has the African Development Bank received such wide recognition and strong support across the board for its work by the G7. We can take pride that from our very humble beginnings, the African Development Bank is today a globally respected institution, taking its place among global financial institutions, innovating and leading. The African Development Bank issued hybrid capital on the global capital market, the first ever by a multilateral development bank, creating a new global asset class for institutional investors. The African Development Bank is the first and the only multilateral development bank to do synthetic securitization, transferring risks from our sovereign and non-sovereign portfolios to the private sector institutional investors. In 2021, your bank, the African Development Bank, was ranked the best multilateral financial institution in the world by Global Finance. In 2022, the African Development Fund, our concessional lending institution, was ranked as the second best concessional financing institution in the world by the Center for Global Development, ahead of all 48 concessional financing institutions, including in the OECD countries. In 2022, the African Development Bank was ranked as the most transparent financial institution in the world by Publish What You Fund. Our founding fathers will be proud of us today. The confidence of our non-regional shareholders that form a critical part of our bank, who joined to bolster Africa's homegrown financial institutions, is fully justified. Together, building on the foundations laid by our founders, we have built a global financial institution, focusing on Africa, bringing the world to Africa, and taking Africa to the world. As we celebrate our 60 years as African Development Bank, let the achievements that we have recorded, the lessons that we have learned, the impacts that we have had, and the humility that we have, knowing fully well that the journey ahead is still long, give us a greater impetus to do even more. Let's celebrate Africa's development. Let's accelerate it relentlessly. Africa deserves the best, and only the best is good enough for Africa. Happy 60th anniversary. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Asante sana. Shukran. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Mr. President, for your insightful statement. May I invite His Excellency, Mr. Musa Faki Mahamat, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to make a brief statement.
Excellencies, heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, distinguished guests. 61 years ago, the Organization of the African Unity was born, now the African Union. A year later, the Continental Organization gave birth to its first child, its daughter, the African Development Bank. Anniversaries are moments for rejoicing, but also, and above all, moments to take stock of the path behind us and to look forward to the path ahead. The African Development Bank did excellent work for Africa for the last 6 decades. Its portfolio across all member states is consistently strong. The African Union, as you know, at its 50th anniversary in 2013, produced Agenda 2063, which can be considered a triptych: integrated Africa, prosperous Africa, and peaceful Africa. It asked the African Development Bank to mobilize the resources required on the continent and beyond to finance this agenda. This agenda has emblematic projects in terms of infrastructure, energy, food security, health, education. It is very ambitious. Thank you, dear brother, Dr. Adesina, for the efforts made up until now to produce the Africa we all want. Today, 60 years on, our continent is once again facing significant challenges. Yes, we're not where we were at the beginning of the 60s at the start of independence. We need to stop self-flagellating. We need to find a balance, strike that balance. Africa is a continent that still has serious problems, a lack of infrastructure. We launched the African Free Continental Trade Area. And we cannot be efficient until we are able to interconnect the different parts of this continent. So there are important challenges at the level of infrastructures. The African Union has set up a specialized institution, a top-notch institution, working hand in hand with the African Development Bank. Energy, as we heard here today already, some 600 million Africans still do not have access to energy, to electricity. How can we have true development without electricity? Another significant challenge. I'm pleased, as I heard from President Sassou, that 3.6 million Africans will be connected by 2030. So we will cut by 50% the number of those who do not have access to electricity, to power. This is a huge challenge, and I strongly encourage the African Development Bank to invest in this sector. The bank requires the support of member states first and foremost if it is to do better. Financial support, but above all, political support, so that it can take its rightful place, helping to develop the continent further. Our continent also requires peace and stability. The African Union has focused on its peace fund, millions of dollars, over $400 million to help improve in this field, but we still deal with terrorism, which threatens international peace and security, and as you know, this is at the heart also of the concerns of the UN Security Council. Thankfully, last year, there was a resolution that seeks to finance 75% of African Union-led peacekeeping missions, especially those to fight against terrorism on the continent. The remainder is still required so that we can finance peace and stability on the continent. I hope, and the African Development Bank has already begun to do this, I hope that we can think about financing security. Without security, we cannot have stability, and so we will never be able to improve our rating. And you, as professionals, know this full well. You know the narratives, you know the discourse about the situation on the continent. This is a huge challenge, and we must needs reflect about this. The African Union is undergoing reforms. Thank you to Presidents Ruto and Kagame, who, working with the Commission, are leading these very difficult reforms. We have also registered progress in this field, but more has yet to be done, and I say this with significant regret. There is still a need for political will from our states to push these forwards, because we have to speak in unison, and this, unfortunately, is not always happening. Africa, the African Development Bank, can only push forward the dream of this continent if we are united, integrated, and speaking with one single voice in a world where, as you know, there are significant challenges and turmoil. in order to turn the page, we need to turn the page standing united. Integration and prosperity are interlinked, linked to the integration of our economies, to stability, to peace, and so we need significant efforts. We can count on the efforts of the African population, the dynamic efforts of its young people, its women, but I would exhort African leaders to reflect on the need to work together to improve political and economic governance on the continent so that we have the wherewithal to support our efforts so as to achieve the Africa we all want. Happy anniversary to the African Development Bank. Thank you all.
Thank you, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Without the OAU, there would have not been an African Development Bank. Thank you, and thank you for the partnership. May I invite His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya, to make some brief remarks.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, indulge me because I have been asked actually instructed, I think, by President Sassou Nguesso to give a progress report on the meeting we had in Paris on the financing pact. And you know, in keeping with African tradition, when an elder gives instructions, you have to obey. So let me give a brief progress report, and I hope he will be listening. After the meetings we had in Paris, we subsequently had the Africa Climate Summit, in which we consolidated our position as a continent. And we were clear on what kind of financing infrastructure that we were looking for. Number one, we were looking for concessionary resources that would make sense to our development. Number two, we were looking for long-term resources that had grace periods of up to 10 years and repayment periods of up to 40 years. Number three, we wanted these resources at scale. And number four, we were very clear that these resources were meant for the financing of our development. We subsequently took our position to COP28, and we had a very positive conversation. And finally, we launched the Africa Green Industrialization Initiative that will provide a mechanism for investment in our green energy resources to facilitate industrialization, to create jobs, to create wealth, and to move Africa to the next level. Subsequently, we came here a month ago, and by the time we were in COP28, the difficulties we had in Paris of whether we need reform of the international financial architecture. You remember the heated conversation we had in Paris, because many countries in Paris did not believe that there was a requirement or there was need of whatever nature for the transformation and reform of the international financial architecture. But by the time we were getting in December, in COP28, there was concurrence in Europe, in America, in Asia, and of course in Africa, that there was need. And everybody agreed that there was need to reform these financial institutions. Fast forward, last month, we had a meeting here with the World Bank to discuss concessionary resources in the IDA window replenishment 21. We made very good progress with the World Bank in that framework. Step forward, last week, the outcome of my visit to the United States, there were two significant outcomes. Outcome number one is investment of $1 billion for the first data center powered by green energy in Kenya. And number two, after extensive consultations with President Biden, and because he confirmed to me that he believed in the transformation of Africa and he wanted to support, because of the conversations we had, you remember, at the African Leaders Summit in America last year. And because America is a big contributor both to IDA and to Africa Development Fund, President Biden committed $21 billion that will go to some of it to the two institutions, World Bank, IDA framework, and Africa Development Bank's Africa Development Fund program, which we are discussing here today. The replenishment, the 25 billion Adesina is looking for the Africa Development Fund. And today, Mr. President, we are furthering that conversation with the confirmations we're going to make to enhance significant funding, concessional resources to Africa Development Fund so that we can meet the targets where we wanted concessional funding, long-term resources, and at scale. I hope I have made a good case and I have met the pass mark. Your Excellencies, I acknowledge the insightful remarks you have made on Africa's prospects. Your words underline the critical need to match our continent's immense potential with corresponding concessional financing and action. I reiterate that there is a clear necessity for increased funding in the next replenishment cycle of Africa Development Fund with a target of not less than $25 billion. Looking ahead, the Africa Development Bank will be central in addressing Africa's challenges by financing climate change mitigation, adaptation, green industrialization, and closing the infrastructure gap in rail, in road networks, internet, broadband, energy, and the development of our ports. As we celebrate the Africa Development Bank's 60th anniversary here in Nairobi, it is vital for us as African leaders to support the bank's transformative role by supporting its access to concessional resources for our continent's transformation. Additionally, it is time, as I said, to support an African-created rating agency that will provide accurate and fair assessment of Africa's economic realities and status. It is said in our country that poverty cannot be shared. What can be shared is wealth and prosperity. And so, Kenya can only be prosperous in a thriving continental neighborhood. That is why last week, as an engaged American government, 60% of the time I spent prosecuting Africa's agenda, and 40% of the time I spent pushing Kenya's agenda, because I understand that there cannot be a prosperous Kenya without a thriving Africa. And therefore, I want to state without fear of any contradiction that the progress and transformation of Kenya is intertwined with that of Africa. Kenya is honored to host this meeting, and we take the boards and management of the two institutions, we thank them for this privilege. I have already requested that after hosting Africa Development Bank's annual meeting 30 years ago in 1994, and again today in 2024, it would be fair and fitting for Kenya to host again in 2054. I am told by my brother evangelist Adesina that my request is under consideration. I would request that this decision be made early, because neither we nor the decision makers then might be fit enough to do so 30 years from now. Once again, I welcome you all to Nairobi and Kenya and wish you fruitful deliberations during this annual meeting of the African Development Bank and African Development Fund. I urge you to take time to sample the delights that Kenya has to offer, including a national park, which is just 10 minutes away from here. Thank you very much. Happy 60th anniversary, Africa Development Bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President, but I see that you're already overthrowing my president as the evangelist for Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, we have spent quite an awful long time today, and we don't want you to continue to spend a lot of time, but we just have one little thing to do: the unveiling of the next 10-year strategy of the bank, which will take just a very few minutes. Can you please animate? And as you animate, can you please get copies ready? And I will call upon the President of the Republic. I will call upon the President of the African Development Bank. I will call upon the Chairperson of the African Union Commission and the Chairperson of the Board of Governors to please stand in the middle as they bring the copies for you to unveil. But prior to that, could you please animate? May I call on Caroline Kende-Robb and Nancy Baker to please bring copies. So here you have it, unveiled the next 10-year strategy of the African Development Bank Group, Governor's copies will be shared out to you. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, the head of state. Thank you, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. And thank you, Chairperson of the Board of Governors. And to close this session, may I please invite the Senior Vice President, Swazi Shabalala, to give a vote of thanks.
Good afternoon. I'm well aware that I'm standing between you and lunch, so I will be very brief. Excellencies, distinguished guests, Chairperson of the Board of Governors of the African Development Bank, Governors of the African Development Bank, alternate governors of the African Development Bank, Board of Directors, senior management, and hope that is everyone. I am honored to stand before you today at this auspicious occasion as we commemorate the African Development Bank's 60 years of existence in this beautiful city, the green city in the sun, Nairobi. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to convey our gratitude to the government and the people of Kenya for the cordial and very warm hospitality and all the measures taken to ensure the success of the 2024 annual meetings of the African Development Bank. We are greatly honored that you could be part of these celebrations today. Your bank is the realization of the dream of our illustrious forebears, that the African Development Bank would transform the continent into the Africa we want. Thank you for celebrating the journey and the remarkable achievements of our institution, even as we acknowledge the long road ahead towards prosperity and the fulfillment of Africa's aspirations. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me express on behalf of the bank our deep gratitude to the governors, executive directors, the president, the chief, what do we call you again? The chief, he's got lots of names, and every single staff of the bank, past and present, for their dedication and commitment. And in conclusion, it is with the utmost sincerity that we express our hope for the continued success of the African Development Bank. Thank you, merci beaucoup, obrigada, shukran, asanteni sana. Thank you.
And thank you very much, SVP. Let me use this opportunity to profusely apologize to the initially planned 2 panels. But you can believe that we've had literally all the panels that we are supposed to have. And because heads of state have stayed for too long and lunch is getting cold, we'll rather transition to lunch and deeply apologize to the other 2 panels so that governors can do their work, because we still have the first sitting. So as we finish, we'll proceed for the high-level luncheon by invitation only. I'm sure you have your invitation. And may I invite my Kenyan counterpart to announce about a particular lunch that will follow also.
Thank you, Secretary General. There's lunch for everybody, so don't panic. So those who are not in the high-level lunch, right next to the high-level tent, there's lunch for everybody. And why don't we give ourselves a wonderful round of applause for being patient and staying till this time. And with that, I will request that we all be upstanding. We're going to have the two anthems again. We'll start with the African Union anthem and then finish with the Kenyan anthem. And after that, we'll kindly request that we remain standing as we allow the heads of state to exit towards the high-level lunch. Then the rest of us will be guided. For now, we start with the African Union anthem. Let us all remain standing in our positions as we allow the heads of state to exit, and the rest of us will exit after that. Remember, there's lunch for everybody, so bon appetit.
Nilianza kuendesha boda miaka michache iliyopita. Wakati huo nilifikiria siwezi kushindwa. Lakini siku moja nilikuwa hospitalini kwa miezi 3. Kosa moja karibu liondoe kila kitu. Boda ni life, lakini life si kitu bila usalama. Zingatia kanuni za trafiki. Hakikisha unavaa helmet na reflector jacket wakati wote.
Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwako na NTSA kwa ushirikiano na European Union.
Welcome to Nairobi, Kenya. On behalf of the Government of Kenya and the African Development Bank Group, I wish to extend a warm welcome to all distinguished guests and delegates to the highly anticipated 2024 annual meetings in Nairobi, Kenya. Kenya's desire to host the 2024 annual meeting and the 59th annual meeting of the African Development Bank Group underscores its commitment to advancing regional and continental cooperation towards an inclusive and sustainable development. The Republic of Kenya takes pride in the foresights of His Excellency the President of the Republic of Kenya, Dr. William Samoei Ruto, in singling out contemporary African problems of socio-economic transformation required given the existential threat of climate change, the required reforms of the multilateral development banks to be fit for purpose, scale up resources, and championing for the reforms of the global financial architecture. This is the 59th annual meeting of the African Development Bank Group and also marks 60th anniversary of the African Development Bank. It is thus a celebration. It has a theme, African economic transformation, the African Development Bank Group, reforming of the global financial architecture. It is such an exciting theme at this time in African continent. The annual meetings will provide an unparalleled networking opportunities, facilitating strategic collaboration and partnership with key decision makers from African Development Bank Group member countries, as well as all shareholders, but also explore feasible solutions for African economies and the transformation agenda. We want to assure you all, our distinguished guests and delegates, that Kenya is fully prepared to host the event, ensuring a seamless experience for everyone. The event will be hosted at the Kenyatta International Convention Center. The historical significance of this convention center is that it hosted the World Bank and International Monetary Fund annual meetings half a century ago. That was in 1973. We look forward to welcoming you to Nairobi for what promises to be a historic chapter in our ongoing partnership with the African Development Bank Group, the African region, and the world at large. So karibu Kenya, welcome to Kenya. Asante sana, thank you very much.
In Kenya. In this particular motion by the Senator for Nyeri, the Senator seeks to have the Senate resolve that notwithstanding the resolution of the National Assembly imposed on matters moratorium on Kenya Power, whose timeline has lapsed, the Senate, in order to cushion Kenyans from the high cost of electricity, is that the House resolves that the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum be allowed to enter into new power purchase agreements or renew existing power purchase agreements with the independent power producers. Allow me to hand you over to this live broadcast, currently presided over by the Speaker of the Senate, Honorable Amason Kingi. Enjoy your viewing and good afternoon.
Mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao wamezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Clerk, we have quorum. Sergeant at Arms, kindly ring the quorum bell for 10 minutes.
The quorum bell is currently on at the Senate, following the directive by the Speaker to give some leeway for senators to make their way into the chamber this afternoon to ensure that the House has quorum to commence business. Addressing the challenges of power purchase agreement renewals and the electricity power supply is a motion lined up for debate this afternoon. This motion is by the Senator for Nyeri County, Senator Wahome Wamatinga. In this particular motion, the mover of the motion in the motion says, notwithstanding the resolution of the National Assembly imposed on a moratorium on the Kenya Power, whose timeline has lapsed at the Senate, in order to cushion Kenyans from the high cost of electricity, do resolve that the Ministry of Energy and Petroleum, as well as Kenya Power and Lighting Company, be allowed to enter into new power purchase agreements or renew existing power purchase agreements with the independent power producers, as well as that Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority, EPRA, fast-tracks the acquisition of necessary licenses required by the independent power producers with valid power purchasing agreements for setting up of power plants. The Senate leader of the majority party is this afternoon set to table a couple of reports from the Office of the Auditor General. The report among them is the financial statements of the municipality of Kimilili by the county government of Bungoma for the financial year ended 30th of June 2023. As well as financial statements of Nyeri County on matters Water and Sanitation Company Limited for the year ended 30th of June 2023. Standing Order 5.3, subsection 1, Senator Hamida Kibwana will be seeking a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding the ongoing evictions and demolitions in Mathare and Mukuru kwa Ruben. These are areas in the Nairobi City County. The quorum has been, allow me to hand you over for this live broadcast.
Proceed with today's business. Clerk, kindly call the first order.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Senate Majority Leader, take your seat, please. Now, honorable senators, as you are aware, the National Prayer Breakfast is an annual event in the calendar of Parliament. It is an interdenominational prayer meeting sponsored by members from both houses of Parliament. The event is being coordinated by an organizing committee which has been working closely with the Kenya National Prayer Breakfast Coordination Team. The organizing committee is co-chaired by Senator Daniel Manzo, MP, and the Honorable Samuel Chepkonga, MP of the National Assembly. The National Prayer Breakfast has been instrumental in fostering national healing, reconciliation, and undertaking on the challenges that face our country. The event will undoubtedly continue to be a uniting forum for our national ethos. This year's National Prayer Breakfast is scheduled to be held tomorrow, Thursday, the 30th of May, 2024, at the Safari Park Hotel in Nairobi from 7 a.m. Honorable Senators, you are expected to be seated by 6:30 a.m. The theme for the event is hope. Honorable Senators, I therefore take this opportunity to invite all Honorable Senators to the 21st edition of the National Prayer Breakfast. Further details relating to the event will be given through the Office of the Clerk. I thank you. Again, Honorable Senators, as you may recall, at the sitting of the Senate held on Tuesday, the 30th of April 2024, I reported a petition to the Senate by Mr. Laban Omsundi regarding restricting county governments from hiring external law firms for legal representation in court cases. Pursuant to Standing Order 238-1, I committed the petition to the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations for consideration. Honorable Senators, subsequent to my committal of the petition to the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations, via the letter reference JLR/SSN/2024-8, dated the 21st of May 2024, I received a request from the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights for the said committee to consider the petition alongside the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. The chairperson argued that the management and operations of legal professionals is a matter that falls under the purview of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights. Honorable Senators, from the foregoing, I reviewed the prayers contained in the petition and established that indeed the prayers relate to governance and management of county governments in relation to the establishment of the Office of the County Attorney as envisaged under Section 4 of the Office of the Attorney Act and the resources used to engage external counsel. This is a matter under the purview of the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations. On the other hand, the prayers also relate to the operations and management of legal profession in the country, in particular, the cardinal principle for a client to access legal representation of their choice. This matter broadly falls under the organization and administration of law and justice, which pursuant to the 4th schedule of the standing orders is a responsibility of the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights. Honorable Senators, having considered the matter as indicated above, I hereby direct that the petition submitted to the Senate by Mr. Laban Omusundi be considered jointly by the Standing Committee on Devolution and Intergovernmental Relations and the Standing Committee on Justice, Legal Affairs and Human Rights. For the avoidance of doubt, this communication does not affect the timelines provided for pursuant to Standing Order 238-2. The committees will therefore be required to table a report on the petition on or before the 29th of June 2024. I thank you. Next order.
Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
The Senate Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the Senate today, Wednesday, the 29th of May, 2024. These are reports of the Auditor General on the financial statements of the following for the year ended 30th June 2023. 1. Municipality of Kimilili, County Government of Bungoma, Kieni Water and Sewerage Company Limited, Nyeri Water and Sanitation Company Limited, Tavevo Water and Sewerage Company Limited, Kisumu Water and Sanitation Company Limited. Mr. Speaker, I beg to lay.
The Chairperson Standing Committee on County Public Investments and Special Funds. Chairperson Sipik. Proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 9th May 2024. Reports of the Select Committee on County Public Investments and Special Funds Committee on its consideration of the audit report for the financial years 2018-2019, 2019-2020, 2020-2021, volume 5 of the following water service providers: Busia Water and Sewerage Water Company Limited, Tambaj Water and Sewerage Water Company Limited, Krinyaka Water and Sanitation Water Company Limited, Malindi Water and Sewerage Water Company Limited, Mandera Water and Sewerage Water Company Limited, Migori Water and Sewerage Company Limited, Mombasa Water and Sewerage Company Limited, Nanyuki Water and Sewerage Company Limited, and Nithi Water and Sewerage Company Limited. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the Chair of CIVIC.
Chairperson Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 29th May 2024. A report of the Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism on its consideration of the proposed amendments by the National Assembly to the County Licensing Uniform Procedures Bill, Senate Bills number 9 of 2022, on behalf of the Chairperson of the Senate Standing Committee on Trade, Industrialization and Tourism.
Chairperson Standing Committee on Finance and Budget.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the Senate today, 29th of May 2024. Report of the Standing Committee on Finance and Budget on its consideration of County Public Finance Laws Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 39 of 2023. Thank you.
Next order, Clerk.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Chairperson Sipik.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion: that the Senate adopts the report of the Select Committee on County Public Investments and Special Funds on its consideration of the audit reports for the following years: 2018-2019, Volume 4, 2019-2020, Volume 5, and 2020-2021, Volume 6 for the following water service companies. 1, Busia Water and Sewerage Services Company Limited. 2, Iten Tambaj Water and Sewerage Company Limited. Kirinyaka Water and Sanitation Company Limited. Malindi Water and Sewerage Company Limited. 5, Mandera Water and Sewerage Company Limited. Migori Water and Sanitation Company Limited. 7, Mombasa Water and Sanitation Company Limited. 8, Nanyuki Water and Sanitation Company Limited. And 9, Nithi Water and Sanitation Company Limited. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Statements pursuant to Standing Order 53, the Honorable Senator Hamida Kibwana. The statement is dropped. The Honorable Senator for Machakos County, Senator Agnes Muthama Kavindu. Proceed, Senator for Machakos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A statement on payment of rates to Nairobi land registration for parcels of the land situated in Machakos County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I raise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of Lands, Environment and Natural Resources concerning certain properties in Machakos County paying land rates to the Nairobi Land Registry instead of Machakos Land Registry. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the circumstances under which the land rates for certain properties in Machakos County are currently being paid to the Nairobi Land Registry instead of the Machakos Land Registry, and evaluate the legal and procedures, reasons for this, including the implications of the financial administration of Machakos County. 2, determine the scope of this matter by identifying the properties, particularly those along Machakos-Nairobi border, and report on how this has been happening and the financial impact on Machakos County's revenue. And 3, detail the actions that the Ministry of Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development is undertaking to address this issue, including the steps taken to ensure proper allocation of land rates payments to the correct land registry, and recommend measures to improve the efficiency of land rates collection and prevent such challenges from reoccurring in the future. Senator Agnes Kavindu, Senator Machakos County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mohammed Chute.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm requesting for a statement on the delayed salaries to employees and interns by the county government of Marsabit. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 31 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare regarding the delay in salary payments to the employees and interns serving the county government of Marsabit. In the statement, Honorable Speaker, the committee should, 1, state reasons for the non-payment of salaries to the employees of the county government of Marsabit for the month of November 2023. Number two, Honorable Speaker, explain the reasons for the long-standing delay in the disbursement of stipends to interns across all the departments within the county government, and establish the period they have not been paid, as well as the total amount owed to them. And finally, Honorable Speaker, provide timelines for settling the arrears due to the employees and the interns, and state the measures being taken by the county government of Marsabit to address these delays and to ensure timely payment in the near future. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Kisang.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I arise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the shortage of wheat seeds in the country. Honorable Speaker, in the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the current shortage of wheat seeds in most retail and wholesale stores in the country. Second, state any government interventions aimed at addressing the shortage immediately to ensure farmers are able to plant according to their schedules. 3, outline measures put in place to prevent a recurrence of such shortages in the future and to guarantee consistent and reliable supply of seeds in the country, Honorable Speaker, because there have been shortage of wheat and maize seeds in the past. Thank you.
Senator David Wakoli, Honorable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Request for statement on claims of unfairness in the recruitment of casual workers in Bungoma County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labour and Social Welfare regarding claims of unfairness in the recruitment and payment of casual workers by the Bungoma County Government. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the status of casual workers employed by the county government of Bungoma from 2013 to date, and furnish the Senate with a comprehensive report on the departments they have been serving in, stating their wages and whether the payments made to them as casual employees are up to date. 2, outline the guidelines, specific conditions, and requirements applied during the recent recruitment and absorption of some of the casual workers in the permanent and pensionable terms, stating the criteria used to retain or dismiss some of the casuals who have served for long. 3, state whether the proper procedure was followed in absorbing the casual workers and provide evidence of when interviews were conducted, if any, and a list of the individuals who were eventually appointed to the various positions. And 4, table evidence of payments made to casuals by the county government from the financial year 2022-2023 to date, outlining any measures in place to ensure that all casuals are paid their dues on time, including any arrears of wages. Mr. Speaker, sir, my second statement on the crop insurance offered to farmers in Bungoma County by the county government of Bungoma. In the statement, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53.1. I seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries regarding the crop insurance scheme offered to farmers in Bungoma County for the financial year 2022-2023 and 2023-2024. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide a list of all insured farmers including the allocations, the respective insurance companies providing crop insurance under the scheme, signed contracts between farmers and the insurance companies, and the terms of the insurance cover, including the benefits and the variety of crops covered. 2, present evidence detailing the tendering process through which this insurance was awarded and ascertain whether due process was followed. And 3, state how much the county government has set aside for the crop insurance, how much has been utilized for the same function, and provide evidence of remittance of payments to companies providing crop insurance services to farmers. Mr. Speaker, sir, my third statement on the procurement of medical insurance for Bungoma County government employees for the financial years 2022-2023 and 2023-2024. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Health regarding the procurement of medical insurance for the Bungoma County government employees for the financial years 2022-2023 and 2023-2024. In the statement, the committee should, 1, provide information on the procurement process leading to the award of the tender for the provision of medical insurance for Bungoma County government employees to Britam Insurance Company. 2, state whether views of the employees or any form of participation involving employees of the county was conducted before Britam Insurance was awarded the tender. 3, find out whether the tender was competitively sourced and provide a list of all bidders who expressed interest and the reasons why their bids failed. 4, furnish the Senate with the medical insurance policy documents and the contract agreement between Britam and Bungoma County government for the provision of medical insurance, highlighting the contract sum, the number of staff and their beneficiaries covered, and the scope of benefits, stating whether Britam has honored the agreement. And 5, state the number of employees who benefited and those currently benefiting from the medical insurance scheme in the financial years 2022, 2023, and 2023-2024, further stating the amount of money remitted annually to Britam for the service. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Next order.
Order number 8, the Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill, Senate Bills number 17 of 2024. First reading. A bill for an act of parliament to amend the Constitution of Kenya.
Next order.
Order number 9, motion. Consideration of the report of the Mediation Committee on the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024.
The Co-Chairperson, Mediation Committee. May I proceed?
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move that the Senate adopts the report of the Mediation Committee of the Division of Revenue Bill, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024, laid on the table of the Senate on Wednesday, 29 May 2024, and that pursuant to Article 113(2) of the Constitution and standing under 167(3) of the Senate, approves the mediated version of the bill. Mr. Speaker, sir, Article 218(1) provides that at least 2 months before the end of each financial year, there shall be introduced in Parliament a division of revenue bill, which shall divide revenue raised by the national government between the national and county levels of government. Pursuant to this constitutional provision, the Division of Revenue Bill 2024, National Assembly Bills number 14 of 2024, was published by the Kenya Gazette Supplement number 57 of 8 March 2024. The bill was introduced in the National Assembly, debated and passed without amendments. Consequently, in accordance with Article 110(4) of the Constitution, the bill was referred to the Senate for consideration. The bill provided for the projected share of revenue for financial year 2024-2025 at Kenya shillings 2.948 trillion. This revenue was proposed to be shared as follows. National government was to get 2.540 trillion. County government, Kenya shillings 391.116 billion. And equalization fund, Kenya shillings 7.852 billion. Mr. Speaker, sir, the bill was read a first time in the Senate on Wednesday, 27th March 2024, and consequently debated and approved with an amendment on Thursday, 2nd May 2024. The amendment provided that A, the national government should be allocated Kenya shillings 2.524 trillion, while the county government should be allocated Kenya shillings 415 billion 952. Mr. Speaker, sir, the amended version of the bill was transmitted to the National Assembly for consideration. The National Assembly considered and rejected the Senate amendments on Monday, 13th May 2024. Consequently, pursuant to Article 112(2)(b) of the Constitution, the bill was referred to a mediation committee pursuant to Article 113(1) of the Constitution. The speakers of both houses constituted the mediation committee comprising of 9 members from each house. Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee was mandated to 1, consider the division of the revenue bill, and number 2, to attempt to develop a version of the bill that both houses will pass. And Mr. Speaker, this really happened, and the committee sat, and we really considered our mandate accordingly. Mr. Speaker, I wish to report that the committee on a total of 3 meetings. These sessions were lengthy since each party was focused on convincing the other and justify that their proposed allocations are the best for consideration. The committee made a number of observations as indicated in the report. Among them, number A, devolution has played a critical role in the development of various regions in the country, and that devolution was working. The proposed allocation to county governments is insufficient and it requires an increase. Another observation was that in the effort to ensure expenditure matches the projected revenue correction, the national government, through the National Treasury and economic planning, and rationalized the project budget for financial year 2024-2025, and the projected total expenditure and be revised from 4.1 trillion as contained in the 2024 BPS to Kenya shillings 3.9 trillion. And the other observation is that the trend in revenue performance in the current financial year 2023-2024 were not quite positive. There is increased debt service expenditure. The national government's under commitment to implement a fiscal consolidation plan targeting to reduce the fiscal deficit to estimated 3.9% of GDP in financial year 2024-2025. And Mr. Speaker, both members of the committee, 9 from the Senate and the 9 from the National Assembly, besides what they arranged when they dropped the bill, we were in agreement that more resources really needs to go to the counties. And Mr. Speaker, when we started negotiating, already they started increasing exponentially the figures from 391, and that shows, Mr. Speaker, both committees were really respecting devolution. So, Mr. Speaker, considering all the other offers made during the negotiation and the strict physical consolidation part, the government and committed to the mediation committee resolved that the allocation for financial year 2024-25 to both levels of governments be as follows. A, the national government equitable share, Kenya shillings 2.2 trillion, 540 billion, 153 million, 902,710. And the equitable share, county equitable share at Kenya shillings 400 billion, 116,000, 788,147. So that is 400.1 billion. And I'm surprised senators are not happy that we have hit the 400 billion mark this financial year. Mr. Speaker, sir, the mediated version of the bill is attached to the report of the committee, indicating the allocations as per the aforementioned recommendation. Mr. Speaker, I appeal to all the senators of this distinguished House to support the recommendation of the committee. This will ensure the county governments get an additional Kenya shillings 9 billion from what the National Assembly and earlier proposed in the bill at 391.1 billion. We actually agreed that moving forward, in the next 3 years, Senator Enoch Wambua, we are going to 500 billion mark. We agreed with the National Assembly Committee that there are so much money left at the national level. We agreed that next time they will be able to unbundle all the devolved functions in water, in agriculture, in health, so that more money can go to the counties. In conclusion, Mr. Speaker, because this is a fund matter, I want to appreciate the members of the committee for their dedication to ensure the assigned task was completed in a timely manner. And I want to thank the following members who I arranged in the mediation committee. Number 1, Senator Dr. Mboni Karwale, CBS MP. 2, Senator Fatuma Nduro, CBS MP. 3, Senator Moses Kajwang, MP. 4, Senator Agnes Mudhama, MP. 5, Senator Jackson Mandago, MP. 7, Senator Endege Cherwo Kech, MP. 8, Senator Mohamed Mwinyihaji Faki, CBS MP. Further, I recommend the Secretary to assign to the mediation committee for the facilitation provided to the committee in discharging its mandate. Mr. Speaker, because Senate, actually the committee that decides on you to be decorated, because out of all these members, the 9 members, 1, 2, 3, 4 are decorated in the CBS. Another one, Jackson Mandago, Senator, EGH, Kadhuri Muronge, MGH. So I recommend, and one of the officers who sits in that committee was here, and don't know where he has gone, that also Senator Moses Kajwang be given a mentor for this wonderful job. Senator Agnes Mudhama, you also deserve a mentor. Senator Mohamed Chute from Marsabit. Senator Andy Okech, you also need, even though maybe you also need that mentor. Simply because I think I saw that maybe you have some time, a bit of time to do the mediation, but I pray that also you get that mentor, Senator Andy Okech. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I really want to also thank you for giving us this opportunity, because this committee, actually, Kenyans are happy. Kenyans are happy because we have increased money to the counties. What I only will ask the governors, let them do the honorable thing to take care of the 400 billion. And our 2 committees, CPIC and CPAC, make sure you are up to date from next financial year. You are up to date so that you can be able to oversight the governors who are in office. Come up with a formula that will make you be able to audit 2024, 2023, 2024, and then you come again by next year. When the Auditor General brings the report, you also audit now this 400 billion. We want to see how this money will be spent. So and Senate, because we are the defenders of devolution, will be able to use, I am not sure whether now we have the oversight fund or what we will use to make sure that we have this 400 billion. It is unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, that we can give 400 billion to the counties and then we don't match money to do oversight of this 400 billion. We can give them as much money as they want, but then we also need money for oversight so that this money can go to the right choices. I'm not campaigning for oversight fund, but these people need to be oversighted. We need to move. This afternoon, we met as liaison committee. Committees of the Senate are starved of resources to do oversight. And we are trying to look for funds where we get money, maybe in contingency, which is meant for handle committees and mediation committees. So another point that I will ask both leadership of this House, both the majority and minority side, to make sure that in this budget, we have resources for the committees. Actually, committee work is almost stalling because of lack of resources. So with these many remarks, I want to ask my brother, Senator Dr. Mboni Karware, to second this bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to congratulate the mover of the motion and remind him that because he has taken this chance to recommend various accolades for distinguished members in this House, he should also remember that I deserve a bigger medal than CBS. I cannot be at the same level like my sister Agnes Kavindu. For the obvious reasons. Mr. Speaker, I therefore rise to second this very important motion on a day when, Mr. Speaker, I think the whole country is happy. Kenya is happy because if there is one area, Mr. Speaker, where all Kenyans are in agreement, is that the real measure, the real indicator of the new constitution was the principle of devolution. Mr. Speaker, according to our national anthem, we are supposed to build this country together. And as we build the country together, Mr. Speaker, our national anthem envisages shared glory. Mr. Speaker, I have seen 20 budgets in my life as a parliamentarian in this country. And in all these 20 budgets, there is skewed allocation of development funds. The country never moves together. It is only through devolution that we see an attempt for the country to move together. I'm happy that the National Assembly, for the first time, led by the leader of the minority, Apio and I, stood with this Senate when the figure of 415 went to that House. And also during our mediation, several members of the National Assembly also stood with this Senate. The country is now coming of age. People are starting to appreciate the role of devolution. Mr. Speaker, in 2013, when we were debating from the garage at KICC, Mr. Speaker, at that time, you are a young lawyer. You had just won your seat as the governor of Kilifi.
Senator Boni.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
What is the point of order before I address the Senator?
Mr. Speaker, is it in order for Senator Boni Alwale to want to bargain for whatever is asking for, and saying that we are not in the same level, is quoting me, is quoting you, and yet we are in the same level in the Senate working together.
Senator Boni, just stick to seconding this motion.
Yes, Mr. Speaker,
just proceed to second the motion.
Mr. Speaker, there's something called stagecraft.
Just proceed to second the motion, Senator Boni.
Which is exactly what I'm doing.
Please take my advice, because you may need it in the next few minutes.
Thank you. You know, this is a very unique motion, Mr. Speaker. If the Speaker was to be offended and he was to throw me out, you would create a serious crisis in the